Somnambulist is a game book written and self-published by Valerie Paris. It has 482 paragraphs. It is divided into 3 main sections, and you are the somnambulist of the title. So you walk around when you're asleep, you have weird dreams and visions. You also work in a retro video game store. And that's all I'm going to tell you about the story. There is a description in the back, on the back cover of the book, and I'm not going to read it to you because actually I think that already contains spoilers. I already wish I hadn't read it, so maybe you shouldn't either. And just know that the story is horror, urban fantasy. There will be stuff that happens which is increasingly weird. I don't think that's a spoiler to tell you. There is a game system. You have 4 main abilities: Aura Read, Project, Scry, and Psionic Attack. And at the beginning of the game, you choose a loadout, one of these 2 options, and you write those bonuses there. When you need to take a test, the text will instruct you to do so, and you will roll 2 dice. You will apply the modifier for the ability that you're testing, plus possibly other modifiers, local modifiers based on the situation, or items that may apply. And if you pass the test, and if you roll equal to or higher than the difficulty of the test, you pass the test. And that is nice, because that means that to pass the test, you need to roll high, and that's my favorite thing. I'm not a big fan of game books where you need to roll low to succeed. The worst ones when you need to roll low to pass a test, but roll high to hit the enemy in combat. As for combat, incidentally, or in general about your health, there are only 2 statuses, which is, well, I guess 3, which is healthy, wounded, and double wound means that, well, usually you're dead, but death may not be the end depending on the situation. But again, if you have a wound, try usually not to get a second one. The game system is very simple, very intuitive, and I like it very much. But remember, this is a game book, so not just a game. Then we need to also look at the story, and we'll look at the way the story is constructed, specifically as a network of interconnected paragraphs. And that is kind of where the problem is. Again, the atmosphere is nice, it's dark and ominous, and I like that. But the way the gamebook is constructed as a network that you navigate has 2 things that I don't like in gamebooks, and I think they are significant problems. One is when you have multiple options and the paragraphs, instead of being scrambled, are one next to the other. So whichever I recommend there, whatever I do there, there'll be the problem that I can look at one and I may get a spoiler for the other. The same happens there, and the same happens in many other cases. That's kind of the standard thing. I think the author should have done, as it is more common, to scramble the paragraphs so that as I look at one, I don't see what the other does. And I know it's divided into sections, but you can still scramble them within each section so that, again, the 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs coming out of the same menu of options are not adjacent to one another. Another problem that I have is that, unfortunately, many of those options are indeed completely irrelevant. Very often, no matter what you choose, you're then brought back to the same paragraphs over and over again. I'm just choosing some random pages here, and you will see very often that, again, no matter what you do, you go back to always the same paragraphs. And there are just so many of these choices that are indeed completely irrelevant, and that is very annoying and irritating, because when we're reading a game book, we want to be able to make choices that are impactful. As you can see from multiple paragraphs, we can go to the same situation and the same situation again, and many paragraphs will bring us back to the same situation. And again, the reason to read a game book rather than a linear game book, to me, is precisely to make choices that are impactful. And I know some of those, yeah, you have multiple choices, then you go back to the same paragraphs. but there's an adjustment to your stats, adjustments of this kind, but many cases that is not the case. You just go back. I'm trying to look for a paragraph where you choose one of possible drinks. There is a list of like 10, and despite the fact that one of the options is my favorite drink, Negroni, just when I see the list, I know it doesn't matter much. I know that all or most will go exactly to the same paragraphs. All or most will mean that I'm told, okay, here's the drink, and that's about it. I can't find it, but trust me, it's in there. And again, what a pity that the one time there's a game book that lets me drink a Negroni. It's in a way that is structurally irrelevant. Hey, I have to say, if you drink a Negroni is the same as drinking an old-fashioned, then again, there is something in the design of the book that is a problem. In general, the book feels very much like a piece of linear prose, linear novel, to which then a couple of choices or many choices have been added, but they do not fundamentally alter the story. There are a couple of endings at the end, but in order to experience them, you still have to go through, through so many different options. Oh, incidentally, see 268, 69, 70, so many of them are sequential, and again, sorry for the spoiler, that is a spoiler. But guess what happens if you choose one or two drinks? That's it. So that's the problem. That's the problem I have with Somnambulist by Valerie Paris. It's much more of a book than a game book. It's linear fiction from the point of view of the game design. I think there's a good game system, roll high and apply modifiers, so like that. But the system of choice is not particularly engaging. As you have sometimes in self-produced games or game books, there are mistakes here. They're not so much like typos, but grammar mistakes that I found a bit surprising in a book that appears to be written by a native speaker of English. Sentences like, him and Jesse were friends. Well, I expect a professional writer to be able to tell what the problem is with that sentence. Who's mistaken for whose, this sort of thing. Again, if somebody's publishing a book, even self-published, I wish they had cleaned up those details here and there. This is my assessment of Somnambulist by Valerie Paris.